Today, I am going to be talking about the Lama Rinpochema prayer that we were given to chant after Kempo Karthar Rinpoche's parinirvana. I am taking much of this teaching from a book by Taisita Rinpoche called Round Path and Fruition, where he talks about this prayer. This prayer was written by Jamgon Kongtrul the Great, who was a great master of the Kagyu lineage in the 19th century. And he traveled around Tibet, receiving teachings and empowerments on lineages and practices that were dying out. And he then wrote these down, and there's voluminous texts of his out there that he compiled. And he wrote many prayers, and so this is one of them. In this book, there's a short prayer, which I'm going to read first of all, and then we'll get into this longer one. I pray to you, precious Lama, kind Lord of Dharma. I call out to you with longing. For me, the unworthy one, you are the only hope. Bless me that your mind blends with me. This short supplication, we are calling out to a Lama. It depends on who you want to be calling out to. Could be Karmapa, it could be Kempo Karthar Rinpoche, it could be another Lama. Since we were given this to say after Kempo Karthar Rinpoche's parinirvana, I would say it would be good to feel that you're calling out to him. So we do this with sincere and genuine devotion, a feeling that you need his help or her help, whoever that person is. It could be, quote, precious master also. Again, whoever it is that you feel that you want to direct your devotion to and your supplication to. The point is that we're not enlightened, and so we turn to an enlightened being and ask for their help. And because of the Kagyu lineage being an unbroken lineage that goes back to the Buddha, the Guru's wisdom mind goes back to the Buddha. And if you think about it, in the refuge tree that we use in Nundro, you have all these lineage lamas, and it goes back to Vajradhara in the center. And in Vajrayana Buddhism, Vajradhara is considered the primordial Buddha, enlightened mind that has never been confused, and as a result has never had to travel the path, unlike Shakyamuni Buddha, who was confused and had to travel the path and attain Buddhahood. Quote, if we have unforced, unfabricated, true devotion, this will happen. We will attain Buddhahood or the state of Vajradhara. He also points out that we need to be patient because this may take many lifetimes. A lot of times in the classic texts, they talk about how Vajrayana is so powerful that you can attain enlightenment in one lifetime. The Dalai Lama once said this in a talk of his that I attended. Enlightenment in one lifetime is propaganda. It takes really more than one lifetime of practice, devotion, and so forth. I have been talking about these lineage lamas in the past few months, and people like Gampopa were predicted by the Buddha that he would appear, so he did not attain enlightenment in one lifetime. The same thing for Dusam Kempa, the first Karmapa, that he was predicted, that these beings had from the previous lives, just like the Buddha, accumulated a lot of merit and were well on their way to Buddhahood when they were born in their body that they did attain enlightenment in. So now going to this prayer, I'm going to read the whole thing. And the translation here in the book by Taisita Rinpoche is slightly different. And this shows you the limits of translation, that different translators are going to emphasize things slightly differently. In the book, this is how it reads. Then I will read it as we were given it from KTD. Precious Lama, I pray to you. Bless me that my mind gives up ego grasping. Bless me that contentment arises in the stream of my mind. Bless me that independence arise in our continuums. Bless me that non-dharmic thoughts may cease. Bless me that my mind be realized as unborn. Bless me that confusion may subside in its own place. Bless me that all phenomenal existence be realized as Dharmakaya. So the KTD version translation is, I supplicate the precious Guru. Grant your blessings that fixation on a self be abandoned by the mind. Grant your blessings that independence arise in our continuums. And the one that I just read has contentment arises. The next is grant your blessings that non-dharmic thoughts cease. Grant your blessings that I realize my mind to be unborn. Grant your blessings that confusion be pacified in its own place. And grant your blessings that all that appears and exists be realized to be the Dharmakaya. So now to go into this in more depth here, this first one, Precious Lama, I pray to you. Tai Situ explains it this way, quote, I pray to you and supplicate with devotion the precious Guru, the precious Master, end quote. So we are supplicating with devotion, with confidence in the Master. A good definition of supplicate is to ask or beg for something earnestly and humbly. So there is this element of humility with this. The next phrase, bless me that my mind gives up ego grasping. We are praying here with limitless aspirations. We're not being pragmatic and saying, well, help me give up ego grasping a little bit. Help me be just a little bit less attached to my body or my possessions. That we're asking that we completely give up ego grasping. We all have egos, and they can be a big problem for us. And we're asking help to renounce our egos. And Tai Situ Rinpoche defines bad ego as being ruthless, that it is interested in benefiting itself and doesn't care a whole lot about what happens to other people in its pursuit of happiness and pursuit of avoiding suffering. However, he also talks about a good ego being confident. Chogyam Trungpa used the phrase primordial confidence, that this confident idea of, you could call it the functional ego, something that allows us to navigate samsara, that it never needs to prove itself. It never gives in to self-doubt. It isn't motivated by competition. It doesn't require validation, this kind of primordial confidence. It is confidence beyond the 8 worldly concerns. And I'll go into those in a little bit later, but basically the things that most sentient beings, humans especially, are concerned about is praise and blame, fame and insignificance, pleasure, pain, gain, loss. These are the 8 worldly concerns that we get totally wound up in with our egos and grasping and so forth. So this, quote, good ego, unquote, you could think about it in terms of Vajra pride. When we do a deity practice, after the dissolution of the visualization of the deity, we re-arise, and it is said to view yourself as the deity, that all sound is the mantra of the deity, all forms are the body of the deity, and all thoughts are the mind of the deity. So this is Vajra pride. So we don't give up this when we give up ego grasping. We give up grasping to the 8 worldly concerns, grasping to think that we are better than other people, grasping at all kinds of ego games. and afflictive states of mind. So the next phrase in this prayer is, bless me that contentment arises in the stream of my mind. Here at the KTD version, it says, may independence arise in our continuums. It's meaning the same thing. Quoting Tai Sita Rinpoche, may I realize the meaninglessness of worldly activities and worldly things, end quote. So if we realize the meaninglessness of worldly activities, we're going to be more content. And we're going to have more independence because we're not jerked around by running after worldly things. As I said, the 8 worldly concerns are praise and blame. Ordinarily, we like it when other people praise us, and we're more than willing to blame other people for problems that we have rather than taking responsibility. And we certainly don't like it when other people blame us. So fame, yeah, we don't mind it if people treat us well, treat us like we're important. But a lot of us don't like to be ignored, like you're not important. When we speak, we like people to listen to us, pay attention to us. Pleasure, it's pretty obvious. We like pleasure. We do not like pain or suffering. When we're hungry, we like to eat. And we like to eat the food that we like too. Gain and loss. We like it when we gain whatever it is, whether it be a material object, a pay increase, a new car, or even a car. And we don't like it when we lose. If losing didn't matter to us, we wouldn't have insurance. So we're requesting help to see these attachments of ours and see these worldly things in general as being meaningless. This is extremely difficult, but if we look within ourselves, we see that we are really being controlled by pride, jealousy, greed, fear, anger. It's easier to see this in other people. It's amazing how easy it is for us to see this in other people and how difficult it is to see this in ourselves. Now, the reason why these are meaningless is that they can't be fulfilled or satisfied. It can't be like, well, we get enough and then we get to relax. We don't need to gain anything else. That the more we have, the more problems we have. This month earlier, a lot of my insurance bills came due. Well, why do I have insurance? Well, because I've got a car, I've got a pickup truck, I've got a house, I've got other property, I've got liability insurance, and they all came due, and it cost a lot of money, and it was an indication of how attached I am to things. This is the way it works. You have more property, then you have more to be concerned about. And I have a phrase about home ownership. Because of impermanence, maintenance is permanent. Now, obviously, my maintenance will end when I no longer have the property, but property needs to be maintained. There's always something that seems like it's not working the way it was when it was new. So there's always things to distract us, keep us from practicing, keep us, you might say, tied down, keep us from being independent, keep us from being contented and satisfied. So we're asking that we are able to let go of this meaningless worldly activity. Then it is, bless me that non-dharmic thoughts may cease. And Tai Sita Rinpoche says, quote, please bless me that all thoughts except the Dharma cease to exist in my mind. May my mind be totally occupied with these thoughts, end quote. So again, we're asking for the ultimate, not just a little improvement. We're asking for our mind to be filled with thoughts of compassion, devotion, thoughts that help us develop wisdom, thoughts that are beneficial to us and others. This doesn't mean totally ignoring our own needs. It's not just about giving things to other people, doing things for other people. It's about us practicing It's about us doing what's necessary to have a quiet place to practice. And it's about us feeling safe at home, for instance, as opposed to meal insecurity, worrying about being evicted, worrying about the gunshots in the neighborhood. If you're living in a violent neighborhood, it's really doing what's necessary so you can have a quiet place where you can practice. This is not greedy. And then, of course, it's making time for practice. It's so hard today in this busy world we live in to make time for practice. If we just wait until we have time, it seems like we almost never have time to practice. There's always something else that's pulling us away in the opposite direction. So if we are going to attain enlightenment and be able to benefit all sentient beings, then we have to take care of ourselves. And he mentions that it's a mistake to think that just taking care of many beings as possible is somehow or another the Bodhisattva's way of life, that animal collectors are not good Buddhists, that we have to nurture ourselves. The next is bless my mind to be realized as unborn. Quote, please bless me to recognize and realize the immortal primordial essence of my mind, end quote. So here we're asking that our minds be seen as beyond birth and death, that our mind cannot be born, it cannot die, it cannot be altered, its inherent purity, it's incorruptible, it's limitless, it's even beyond purity and impurity, beyond corruptible and incorruptible. It's beyond conception, it's beyond thought. It's also beyond time and location. This is why it can't die, because it hasn't been born and it's beyond time. This is our Buddha nature that is being talked about here, that we realize our Buddha nature. And our mind is always present. It's always pure. It's never stained. The classic example is like a diamond that is buried in the mud, or perhaps something worse than mud, and it doesn't stain the diamond deep down. It's just superficial, can be washed away. Ordinary beings think that samsara can be made into a diamond if we just do the right things. Everybody starts behaving properly, and we have the proper laws, and on and on and on, that somehow or another we just kind of keep going up and up and up. But that isn't the way it works, that samsara, you can go up and you can go down. Basically, samsara is full of suffering. And when we find that we're getting a bad deal in samsara, what do? We try to change things rather than accepting this is the way samsara is and renounce samsara. But in actuality, our Buddha essence, our Buddha nature is like this diamond. And it's a matter of purifying the obscurations that keep us from connecting with this and realizing it, bringing it to fruition. So it is the Dharmakaya, which is enlightenment itself. It is wisdom beyond any kind of reference point. It is primordial mind, Vajradhara. So that's what's being requested in that phrase. The next is, bless me that confusion may subside in its own place. And Taisija Rinpoche says, bless me that all illusion comes to rest by itself, end quote. In other words, that we see things as they truly are. Now we see things as they appear and think that this is the way things are. But the Buddha taught there is the way things appear, and this is a spurious reality or for a false reality, and there is things the way they actually are, which is non-conceptual, beyond duality, You can experience it, but you cannot describe it. A classic example is that it's like a person tasting sugar, but unable to speak. And so he knows he's tasting sugar, but he can't tell anybody. So this Buddha nature of ours is beyond concept. And seeing things the way they are is beyond concept. You know that you are seeing the essence, realizing the essence, but you can't say anything about it. But once you see that, again, another classic example is like seeing a rope and mistaking it for a snake. This is the way things appear. And then when you examine it, you see that it is a rope and not a snake. And after that, you never think that that rope is a snake again, that it's fully exposed. And with this exposure, then our self-deception and our denial falls away in its own place. So we're requesting here that we realize everything that is happening to us right now, everything that has happened to us in the past, everything that will appear and happen to us in the future are, quote, perceptual illusions. Another explanation of what it means, things the way they appear, this is relative reality. In relative reality, you have big because there's small. You have old because there's young. You have black because there's white. You have female because there's male. You have the East because there is the West, that you need something comparable. I think this makes it very clear. I've used this many times to explain things. I got this bowl from my parents when they downsized. They had traveled to India and Nepal and probably got it, over there on one trip. They were using it to put a potted flower in. So they didn't see this as a singing bowl. They saw this as something you put a potted plant in. If I had a dog and put some water in it and put it on the floor, the dog would drink out of it. If I took it to a junk dealer, he would determine what metal it's made out of, weigh it, and give me a price. So which is the right way? A singing bowl, plant holder, a watering dish, a piece of scrap metal? It's that and a lot more. It depends on the observer. It's not inherently a singing bowl, even though the person that made it to be a singing bowl. But this is the way with relative reality. We project categories, meaning, and all kinds of things on the way things appear. People have different tastes. Some people like really hot peppers and hot food. I like food that's a lot less hot. I'm not going to use the word bland, but much less spicy. You could say that each one of us lives in a separate reality. If you've ever been in a relationship with another person, you'll probably quickly discover that that person views things differently than you do, and you don't always agree on things. And it's because we think the way that we see things the real way, but it's due to our habitual patterns. It's due to our karma, mental conditioning that we project on the world of appearances and think that it's solid. So he uses the example of money. You go to a different country and you have to exchange your money for the currency of that country. If American dollars were real, you wouldn't have to exchange it. It just shows you how these things are just, we've agreed on them, and the value of exchange between dollars and another currency changes actually during the day based on various types of trading and other factors. So he says we need to look at money as a tool and not a god. And frequently it does seem like people worship money. He also says we have to be careful how we make money because of the consequences of the way the money is made. He talks about a number of other obsessions that people can have, types of confusion. He mentions health, and that seems to be quite popular today. I'm amazed at how many, well, let's just say chiropractors. Someone was visiting me here and they wanted to see a chiropractor, and I just couldn't believe how many chiropractors there were out here in the middle of nowhere. And then there are all the health clubs, the personal trainers, and on and on and on. A lot of people are very, very careful about what they eat because they feel that the food will prolong their life and perhaps cure illness. And it can, there's no question about it, but it can also become an obsession. He says, quote, "We can kill ourselves by wanting to be healthy." Basically, healthy people can die of accidents and other causes. And something that comes to my mind, and this is maybe showing my age, but when I was young, I subscribed to the magazine Organic Gardening, and it was founded by J.I. Rodale. And he died on live television of a heart attack. He was on the Dick Cavett show talking about organic gardening, and he had a heart attack and he died. Now his son took over the organization and he started Prevention magazine, which was focused on health. Again, a lot of it was through nutrition. Well, he died in a car accident at the age of 60. So we have to realize the limitations. Oh, I visited a friend of mine a couple of days ago, and he was reading some books by, I'm going to call him a futurist. I'd never heard of this author, and I don't know what his name was, but he was saying that this author predicts that in the future, people will live to 150 years old. My friend is 80 years old. Well, even if you live to 150 years old, you're still going to die. I'm not counting on that happening to me, but we get these crazy ideas in our head and obsessions and don't really see the underlying problem is, and that is that we're confused. And we're requesting here that may this confusion subside in its own place. And we see that relative reality is relative reality. It's not absolute reality. And in a way, it's false or spurious. The next one is, bless me that all phenomenal existence be realized as the Dharmakaya. And Taisitu Rinpoche simplifies that by saying, may I realize that everything is Dharmakaya. In the KTD version, it says, grant your blessings that all that appears and exists be realized as the Dharmakaya. So this is the way things are. So we pray to realize the ultimate essence of everything as being perfect, unchanging. Dharmakaya is one of the three bodies of the Buddha. It cannot be experienced by anyone else. Only the Buddha can experience the Dharmakaya. He can't talk about it because it's beyond conception. But on the other hand, you are aspiring to realize your mind is Dharmakaya, that all external appearances and experiences are Dharmakaya. We still have to realize that if the relative world has consequences, that our actions in the relative world have consequences. So it's a wrong view to think that, well, because of emptiness, that it doesn't matter. I can go around and hurt other people. Gampopa's advice, this is paraphrasing it. Well, my view is as vast as the sky. My attention to karma is as fine as grains of flour. So the point being that you can't avoid the karmic consequences of your actions, even if you are viewing things as all being Dharmakaya. You don't get to pick and choose and say, well, this has no inherent existence, and then because of that, something painful arises, and you have a hard time saying, oh, this is just all Dharmakaya, no problem. you're in pain, you call up the doctor, you try to alleviate the pain. Rinpoche told this story about probably was a Tibetan that got some pretty strong experiences of emptiness. So he was going to travel to India. So he was talking to another person about this, and money came up. And the man said, well, why would I need money? Well, it's easy to think, well, money is empty. But when you get to India and you don't have money, it might be a problem, because your body, which is empty, might want to have some food, might want to have a place to stay, and so forth. To kind of sum this up, his parting advice, respect everyone and everything, do good and avoid doing bad, know your strengths, your abilities, your weaknesses. Associate with negative people only if you can help them. Otherwise, they will bring you down. Pray and dedicate merit to those that you cannot help. And he finishes up by saying, quote, there is no such thing as ultimate badness, ultimate evil, or ultimate dirtiness. Ultimately, everything is perfect.